listening to Pro Booth Talk, photo booth insight, tips, and banter recorded by boothers for boothers. Brought to you by ProBoothTalk.com.
All right, welcome everybody to Pro Booth Talk. How are you doing this afternoon, Lap?
Hi Jason. Hi everybody.
So we wanted to discuss today. We just did an episode called "Choose the Limo," basically defending your prices and encouraging people to pay that extra amount for an elevated service. But we also realize that some people don't provide that elevated service. So we wanted to kind of hit the topic of providing the value that you represent and also like understanding your company's value positioning, I guess. Because sometimes, of course, like the analogy that I like to use is choosing the limo and comparing that to an Uber, but we also understand that there is a place for Ubers, and it's a very large market for Ubers. In fact, it's a larger market than limos. So just kind of wanted to discuss the difference of that and make sure that you are, if you are saying choose the limo or choose the Prada, that you are a Prada or you are a limo. And if you're not, again, that's fine. If you are, I don't know what a discounted handbag is, or if Prada is even a handbag, to be honest. But if you are the Motel 8, that's okay. There's a market for that. You just need to represent yourself as that and market yourself as that, so that clients know what they're getting into when they book you, and that will tend to get you better results as far as reviews and feedback and whatnot.
Absolutely. I think selling yourself as the brand selling your brand as a certain type of service and then under delivering is not a great thing. I mean, that definitely opens you up to bad reviews, different expectation than what the client has. I think that's something that I always have this conversation with people where they talk about how they want to be charging a lot more than what they're charging, but they're not being mindful of the type of equipment that they're bringing, the type of service that they have, the type of presentation. Marketing yourself and then actually delivering are two different things for sure.
Yeah, and they're both equally as important. A lot of times we'll see in the groups people saying things like, you're not competing with the Motel 8s because you're a Waldorf, and that's fine. But then they're marketing, maybe they are telling their client on the phone when they're asked, why are you so much more expensive? A lot of people will say, because we are the Waldorf and we're not competing with the Motel 8s. But then they follow that comment with saying things like, we use the SLR cameras and we arrive half an hour early and we use dye sublimation printing, not realizing that that is the marketing model of the Motel 8. I guess the best thing to do is decide what luxury brand, if you are a luxury brand, if you're marketing yourself as a luxury brand, what example do you use? If that's Waldorf Astoria, or if that's a Porsche or whatever that is, look at that company's marketing. And I assure you, if you go to the Waldorf, you're not going to see marketing for clean bathrooms and cable TV, because that's what Motel 8 does in their marketing. You're going to see really not much about the hotel at all. You're going to see people like getting off a private jet, and you're going to see people on beaches. You're basically they're representing people that have a luxury lifestyle, and they're kind of tying that experience into their marketing. And I think probably at the first PBX, Steve spoke, and I believe he's the one that introduced the word experience into the photo booth world, selling the experience. And a lot of people just took that as like tabbing over and entering the word experience into their marketing. And selling the experience isn't just using the word experience. You need to actually look at what experience you're trying to sell and I guess sell that experience, not using the word experience. That's not what selling the experience means, I guess.
Jason, what do you feel makes a provider, a luxury provider, a mid-range, or a budget? Like what determines a provider being luxury?
I guess, it goes back to the experience that they are providing. If they're making it super easy for everybody if they're showing up dressed nicely, if they're coming. And a lot of this comes down to a list when we discuss it, but obviously that's not what's going to be marketed. So really, I guess a lot of it comes down to how they're selling it. If they're selling it as a stress-free, elevated experience, but then at the end, those results need to be that as well. Like you can't be going in and bothering your couple about where you're going to set up, or if they tell you one thing and you hear something else, it's not, throwing a fit because weren't paid to do 2 setups. Basically, I would say being a luxury brand is being completely stress-free, delivering premium results, and ultimately just making everything so seamless for the end client that ultimately just delivering the service that everything seamlessly. There's no concerns. And on the flip side, if you're a low budget provider, maybe you're using a DIY booth, maybe you're showing up in blue jeans and a t-shirt, you're working a lot of backyard parties, maybe you're one of the people that argue that it's okay to have a drink on the job. Like, these are all things that and obviously everyone runs things differently. There may be a very luxury brand that has a drink on the job. I never advised to do that, but there's some people that do, and whatever, you're going to run your thing how you run your thing. But
I always wonder what the difference between, because I don't register, like I don't associate my brand as being luxury so much. I know we do luxury type events, but I've always been curious, like what makes somebody a luxury brand versus not. It sounds like it's just like someone who brings seamless experience, makes it very effortless, is what it sounded like you were saying. Luxury.
Yeah, ultimate
like a professional,
presentation and
basically
delivery.
like a professional. Yeah. So between
I would
a luxury
say that it
provider,
comes down to marketing, presentation, and delivery, I would say, are the three takeaways for a qualifying your brand as like a lower budget or a mid budget or a high budget company, essentially.
I feel like a lot of people get caught up in like just backdrops. Like they think they're going to be a luxury brand because they have, a clean setup. And in the last few years, like last 3-4 years, everybody has adopted the pillowcase backdrops. Everybody has the same exact presentation almost, in terms of backdrops. I think it's a matter of like understanding what your client is when you say luxury. Like what makes a company luxury to me seems like you should be able to blend in with $1 million event. Like if you look at your setup, not just the backdrop, but if you look at your presentation, if you have, small things like your gaff not taped straight and, way too many props. Whenever I think of luxury, I think of minimalist. So if you're bringing things like red carpet, stanchions, a lot of people in their mind think that that's luxury. And I feel it's the opposite. Luxury tends to be more minimalist, and budget providers and budget clients tend to be more maximizing on the money that they're spending on you. They're usually trying to get as much as they can for what they paid for. So usually in like budget events, you have a client that's going to want like the red carpet. They're going to want the stanchions. They're going to want, tons and tons of props. To me, that's more, when you're selling all that, you're likely not a luxury provider.
I agree with that.
Yeah. But I think in our industry, a lot of people feel like a red carpet and stanchions is luxury, and it's not the case. It's a misconception of like the type of clients that you're targeting. They think that's luxury because they're getting a lot for what they're paying. It's kind of like if you go to Walmart. Walmart is, the budget store. You go there and you try to get as much as you can for what you spend. And I feel in the budget market, that's what you get with photo booths. The more you're bringing to your event, the more likely you're not a Waldorf, you're not a luxury provider if you're bringing a lot of extras.
Yeah, I'd say you hit the nail on the head with the very clean minimalist. And honestly, that's not where we're at. I wouldn't probably define us as luxury, though we are a higher end. So we're definitely above the mid, but below the luxury. I'd say we're somewhere floating in the middle there. And it kind of like a lot of it is, as far as presentation, also putting yourself in the demographic that you are selling to. For example, I recently stayed at the Cosmo, and right away I realized, just walking around, that the class of people that are staying at the Cosmo, like everyone has like very like they look like they're going to clubs. They're wearing like mini skirts and their hair's up and their makeup's done, and guys are wearing suits, and it's a very upscale environment, and they achieve that by charging a certain price and excluding a lot of the lower income people. So you hear often in our groups that people will take $200 for an event because $200 is better than their equipment sitting in the garage getting dust. But the Cosmo on that same level, charging, hey, we've got 20% empty rooms, let's sell those at a discounted rate, because a cheaper rate, getting something would be better than nothing, but it's not. It would hurt their brand. It would bring in a lower class of people and exclude the higher class of people, and those higher class people wouldn't stay there because they don't want to stay somewhere where the lower people are staying, or the lower income level people are staying. So offering something lower may temporarily put money in your pocket, but ultimately you're hurting your brand and you're hurting the image that you tried to create. So like we try to compare ourselves to a limo, but we would definitely rather have our limos sitting in the garage collecting dust than pulling up next to the Ubers. Like, we don't want to associate ourselves with Ubers. We don't want to be the backyard parties. We don't want our clientele to identify us like that. So we make a point not to be in those areas of the demographic. We will never take cheap stuff just to be out, for example.
Just to fill the calendar. Yeah. I have the same mentality as that. There was a time though when I thought, I have enough booths, I have enough machines, I had that mentality, like it's better to just keep us busy than just have our equipment sitting in the garage. And I realized that if your client is a premium client, they want, luxury vendors, they're not going to want to know that they spent $2,000 on you and someone else got you for $200. Like, that's not, I mean, you're talking about, it's a small community of in the events industry, right? So you have a certain amount of planners, a certain amount of vendors, and it's not going to be a secret if you're offering your same premium service, luxury service for, budget rates to someone else because you're filling your calendar. So for me, I'm in the same boat as you, Jason. Like, I rather not book events than book them at a low rate, just because you don't, Louis Vuitton doesn't think, luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, they don't think, oh, we're selling less bags this month, let's lower our price by 50%. They don't have that mentality. You either find a way, you find a way to come up with however much those bags cost, $6,000 or something. You either come up with the money or you don't. And the thing is that if they really want that luxury bag, they're gonna do what it takes. It's the whole, you're setting yourself up as being this dream company that they want. You are the luxury brand that they want at their wedding, to make their wedding, an elevated experience. It's the same as a bag. And if they want that, if they want to be different than their friends, they have to find a way to come up with the money to hire a luxury vendor. Otherwise, they can hire a mid-range or a low budget. There's different markets for different boothers, and you have to, I don't feel like there's any way that you can market to everybody. You have to there's a certain pond that you stay within, and you have to choose which pond you want to be in. You want to be in the pond with the budget providers, budget parties, like backyard. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you have to know where you are and who you're marketing to, and that message that you're sending across to people, the type of equipment you have, the type of service you have, and your pricing. They all kind of fall in line with each other. It's hard to be a luxury provider if you have budget equipment.
Yeah, and you mentioned Louis Vuitton, and it's the same thing as my example with the Cosmo. Like, the Louis Vuitton, as you mentioned, won't lower the prices. In fact, they destroy all their handbags that aren't being used, that aren't being purchased, because they don't want them. Yeah, it's all destroyed because they don't want them in exactly. They don't want them being sold at Ross, because if people in a lower demographic start carrying them, then the people in the higher demographic will stop carrying them. So
Yes.
you've got to cater to your market. But again, there are Rosses, and there are Rosses that sell cheaper bags, and they do very well. And there's nothing wrong with Ross, and there's nothing wrong with Uber. And I keep going back to the higher clientele, but there is a much larger market for the Ubers and for the Rosses of the world. So if that's where you are, that's perfectly fine. You just have to make sure you're marketing to that clientele so that you are delivering ultimately what you are marketing at the end of the day.
Right. Because you don't want to set yourself up for failure. If you're selling yourself as a luxury provider, as someone who is a professional at, loading into venues that take 2 to 3 hours, you want your client to know that you know what you're doing. The last thing you want to be is in over your head beyond the type of service that you're able to provide. I feel like unless you have that experience, it's kind of hard to understand what I'm saying. Like a backyard birthday party, to load into a backyard birthday party is nothing like loading into like Terranea or, like those sky rises over in downtown LA. There's a difference in load-in, going through loading docks, going through security, going through credentials and things like that. Like if you're not prepared for that type of clientele and you sell yourself, it's because I've been there. It's very exciting when, someone pays, 50, because again, I used to be a budget provider. It's exciting when someone pays you $50 or $100 more to work at a venue that's considered high end. But if you're not that type of provider, you'll be shocked. You'll be shocked at, valet parking that's $75. You'll be shocked on the fact that it takes you 2 hours just to get up to the event space versus a backyard party. And the reason why that matters is because when you're selling yourself to these luxury brands and you don't have that type of experience, and you're not really a luxury brand, it's very likely that you're going to be late. It's very likely you're not going to be able to deliver the services as you should.
Yeah, and I was a lower budget provider in my early days too. I think most people were. And, there's a stark difference between the backyard birthday parties, and I honestly miss them a lot of times because those parties, like,
they're easy.
Oftentimes they're easy, and you almost like they make you feel part of the family. Like they're bringing you plates of food and they're telling you to go and dance, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry about the booth. We're okay. We'll have our cousin run it for a while, and you sit down and eat."
Take a shot with us.
Yeah, they were a lot of fun. Where the Waldorf, you're right. You're dealing with the loading docks, and our Waldorf specifically. The loading docks, well, they're actually some of our easiest loading docks, but exiting is kind of difficult. But and you're typically dealing with a planner, which is nice when you're at the Waldorf, but you're also dealing with, like, a lot of times we're incorporating the decor into the photo booth. So if they have floral or some kind of decor going on, we want to meet with the decor person and kind of tie that all together to make sure, at least, even if it's not in the photos, which typically it's not, you're not just like a sore thumb sitting over there in the side of the room when the rest of the room has flowers or whatever kind of decor is going on. We want to make sure it's all tied in together. So it is certainly a much larger level of interaction and whatnot with the event. And another thing I wanted to mention, we've got a kind of a unique perspective on the low end to the high end. We see in the groups constantly people saying that their market is saturated and they can't charge an appropriate rate because there's so many people in their market charging a low rate. So we've got a couple perspectives here. First of all, both of us are in very saturated markets, and both of us have a higher dollar amount product. So we can certainly conclusively say that you can charge a larger amount for a better product in saturated markets. But when I actually started two different companies. One was a lower end company that had booths at like $350 or something like that. And one was marketed as a much more high end luxury, and it was like $1,800 or $1,700. And I did that for an entire year. And So we only booked like 4 jobs with the higher end, and we did something like 70 jobs with the lower end. But the biggest takeaway that I had from that is I not one single time in that year did I send a quote to the same person from both companies. Like, people that are a higher scale and people that are a lower scale, they're typically not shopping both brands. So
Right.
when you say like I can't charge more because there's so many low priced people in my industry, you're probably marketing to the wrong people, because like we very like I've been
You're
a business
marketing in a
owner
certain pond.
since I was 20, and I've done my own marketing for many years. So I had a unique position where I knew how to market to a higher scale person. With one of the companies, I knew how to market towards a lower income clientele with the other company, and there was zero crossover. Like, we never sent a low income quote or a lower budget quote to one client and a higher budget quote to another client, because that client never ever reached out to both companies in our experience.
Yeah. That goes back to the whole like choosing what pond, because I really feel like there's different levels of events. So different people in different ponds. So if you're a luxury provider, you're not going to attract budget clients, because luxury, exactly what you're saying, like they're not in that pond. So when you hear about people who say like, oh, I'm fighting for these booth rentals, you know, people are telling me that 350 is too much. It's too much for their clients. It's because everybody in that pond has this, all the customers in that mid-range, low budget pond all have like a preconceived idea of what a photo booth should cost, and they're all talking to each other. So when you're providing services and you're sending quotes to these clients, it's because they're all in the same pond. They all have the same mentality of what a photo booth's value is. When you move into the luxury market, it changes, because those clientele, they're all their associates, all the other events that they've been to, they're paying a lot more. All the clients are paying a lot more for the type of services that they're getting, from photo booth to, you know, custom napkins, things like that. It's a higher cost because it takes more work. It takes more work to run events for like celebrities, for $1 million weddings. Like, they care about the presentation, but they also care about things like how you load in. They don't want you loading in the middle of the event. A budget provider, a budget client, they're not going to care if their guests are eating during dinner. They don't care that you're coming in with all of your cables and your backdrop stands and you're setting up in front of their wedding. They don't care about that. A luxury high-end client, a celebrity, they're not going to want you to do that. And that you start factoring in early arrivals and things like that when you're delivering for these type of events, and that contributes to the cost. I mean, I don't think people ever talk about that. Like, they think that we're just charging more because it's a high-end wedding, and it's not the case. I know sometimes brides talk about like, I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to pay an arm and a leg for a photo booth. Yes, a wedding tax. Yes. And what they don't realize is that a wedding and a birthday party are totally different types of experiences. It's the same photo booth, but you loading in, it's day and night, because you cannot load in while your guests are roaming around, you know, at a wedding. Like, you typically, I mean, we usually show up like when the DJ shows up, which is like one of the first guys on site, you know, because we can't move all of the equipment that we're moving in, backdrop stands and pipe and drape and, you know, heavy equipment. We can't move that in. Like, a florist can move florals in, you know, small florals, bouquets in the middle of the event. We as photo booth providers, we can't do stuff like that. You know, you're talking about liability. You're talking about, you know, guests being in the way. You're talking about just being a full-on distraction. So there's no such thing as a wedding tax. It just takes more effort for logistics,
right,
than a birthday party.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, you know, they obviously want to charge that higher dollar amount. They're always trying to ask how they increase their prices. And a lot of times, I mean, it's just increasing your prices. Like, honestly, to increase your prices, most times you just need to just do it and things will be fine. But to get to that higher dollar, a lot of times necessarily you don't need to, or you shouldn't until you should, I guess. Like, if you're still wet behind the ears, if you're still learning the ropes, don't try to get too expensive and get to that luxury level too quickly, because you're going to end up burning a lot of bridges. You're going to work in front of a lot of high-end planners that will never use you again if you blow it, you know. And a lot of times people, like, I just put together a 10-year mosaic of every event we've ever done. And it was kind of humbling looking at the first like 18 months, because I thought that we always had great output, and we did not. Like those first 18 months, there's a lot of shadows. And so oftentimes you may think
Congratulations
that
on that, though.
you're on the mark and you're ready, but I would say at least wait like 18 months before you're trying to hit those high end luxury events. And also corporate, like everyone wants to race to corporate, but like my best advice is like, make sure you know what you're doing 100% backwards and forward, and that you're charging as much as you can for what you're doing before you try to go to something like corporate, because people want to go to corporate just because it's a higher paycheck, but there's just so much more involved. And typically you can get a higher paycheck right now by what you're doing. So the answer isn't just like adding on a service or going to another market. Maximize what you're doing first before you're trying to do something else. Maximize the profit, and also learn as much as you can. And then obviously market to the right people. And I guess like there's several books people can buy and read about marketing, and I recommend that you do. And there's several YouTube videos that you can watch about marketing. But just like a quick off the top of my head, using the same examples that I did already, like a higher end marketing campaign for a photo booth would probably focus a lot on the luxury, not so much on the photo booth at all, but the designer dresses, the several tiered cakes, the people showing up in limos. And because
the dream.
Yeah, people are going to be identifying with that. They're not really so much looking at what photo booth it is. They want to see, like, I want to be that person. I want that wedding. And
that
you're kind
luxury.
of just tying yourself into that. And the middle range would probably be focusing more on the photo booth experience, people over there having fun and taking photos. And the lower end would focus more on the product and not the experience or the service.
Right. Like the red carpet.
Yes, and a list of things that they're going to bring in. Their flyers will typically just be a list of DSLR and dye sublimation printing and red carpet, and they'll just have like a photo of a photo strip. Yeah, lots of props, lots of fun props. So I would say that's like the most basic explanation of marketing to those three different demographics. Lower end is going to be product based, mid is going to be service based, and high is going to be experience based. And again, that's not just putting the word experience on your flyer. It's like so many people just say it's a photo booth experience. But what does that mean? Ask yourself what that means. And when I first started trying to separate, because as a lower budget photo booth company, we did just fill whatever dates we could, because especially when we first started hiring people, like we needed to get jobs for them and whatnot. But when I decided that we had to elevate our income, or we weren't going to make it the way I wanted to, and we were needed to elevate our delivery, I decided on the Limo and the Uber analogy. And I literally wrote like "be the limo" on a piece of paper and stuck it to my wall above the computer. And every time I was met with a decision about what I was going to do, whether it was marketing or showing up early or sending out a booth for a cheap amount of money to fill a date, I would, look at that and remind myself, like, what would the limo do? And do the same thing. If you want to be the Waldorf, write that on a piece of paper, or somehow just remind yourself every decision you make, how would Waldorf do this? Or if you're the Motel 8, like what would Motel 8's marketing strategy be here? Or what would their answer be? And a lot of times you could draw a similarity and come up with the same results to achieve what your goal is, just by, I don't want to say copying, because there's too much copying in our industry, but mirroring the marketing strategies of the companies that you're comparing yourself to already. And decision making.
Like that mission statement is huge, Jason. Like I know a lot of us kind of float around, because I was one of them too. Like, depending on the day, someone would hit me up like, "Hey, will you do this price?" Okay, I'm on a good day. Let me let me go ahead and give you this better price. And the moment that I had sat down and did the business plan, mission statement, I did exactly as you did. Like I referred right back to where I wanted my company to be, what brand, what image it had, So I did exactly as you did. Like when someone would ask me, like, will you price match? You know, and sometimes it's not much. Sometimes it's like $100, and it's not even about the amount of money people are asking you to price match. It's about the fact that like if you made the decision that you want to be a luxury provider, you have to set the tone that there's no budgeting. There's no, you set the price. Just as you said, like, think about what the company Louis Vuitton would do. Would they sit there and haggle with you because you're $100 short on a bag? If you're $100 short on the bag, you don't get the bag, you know? And that's my mission statement is very similar to yours. It's a matter of like, there's no budge. If you want the best, you just pay the price. There's no $50 discount. There's no $100 discount. You know, there's no last minute booking discounts. You know, holidays, we charge more because, you know, our team sacrifices time with their family and friends to be there at your holiday event. And, you know, sometimes people will say like, you know, you're not working anyways. And you have to think like, yeah, but if you had that mentality where you lower your price every time you don't have an event, you're easily going to go from your regular price to having your regular price and then your actual price. And that's not something you want, you know. Like I worked for a company for like 3 years, and it's a huge company. It's like a box retailer in the mall. I don't want to say what company it is, but every week they had all of their stuff. You know, we were on commission sales, and they had different items like vacuums and stuff that they would sell. And every week the same items, there was always a full price and a sale price, but the sale price was like that. Then for the 2 years or 3 years I worked there. And, you know, clients aren't dumb. They know, you know, if you're saying, oh, this is our regular price, this is our sale price. They know that your sale price is actually your regular price. And that's you're changing the perspective of what the value of your company is when you create that.
Yeah,
I don't know if that makes sense what I'm
when
saying.
you're offering sales and promotions like that, you are falling squarely in the middle range to low range, because you'll never see Prada offering sales or like Black Friday Prada sales or anything like that. So again, it comes back to like comparing that decision to what, like if you're deciding if you should have a Black Friday sale, would that company that you compare yourself to do a Black Friday sale? And if they wouldn't, then don't. Yeah. And if they would, then certainly, yes, do it.
But not only that, but I feel like if you put your prices on sale, that's telling, this is my mentality on the whole sale concept. Like if you put your photo booth pricing on sale because it's a holiday, you're letting your customers know that you think that you're overpriced. That you actually have room in your costs and your budget and delivery to actually charge a lot less. You just don't want to. And that's not the perception that you want for your client. You don't want your clients to think that you're charging more than you think you're actually worth.
Yeah, it almost feels like you're like stealing from them at that point. Like
yes.
If they see a price for $1,200 and then you have a Black Friday sale of $600, you're like, okay, so their costs are actually $600 and they're profiting at $600 because they're not going to sell at a loss. They're really just taking my $600 at other times. So that's
and that creates a problem too, because for future events, not with them, but maybe with, you know, their family, their friends, word gets out that you charge $600 for their wedding photo booth, and when they're looking for recommendations, the family's looking for recommendations, they're gonna let their family know that company XXX charged us $600, and when you give them your quote for your regular price, it's gonna create a lot of confusion. Your new clients, the new prospects, are gonna think, wow, they doubled the price overnight. Like they charged my friend $600. Why are they quoting me $1,200? So you have to look at it more from the bigger picture of like, stop thinking about it day to day, because that's what I used to do. I stopped thinking about pricing day to day and like my brand day to day, and I thought about it as a whole picture. You don't want to be that provider that's haggling with your clients, because you want to set the standard that you are the cream de crop. You know, you want your clients to have the perception that you are the best of the best. And if you're haggling with pricing, they're not going to have that. They're not going to have that idea. They're not going to see your company as, you know, that dream company that they want at their once in a lifetime event.
Yes. And further, I would say, as far as products, the same thing goes. Like if you go to a Motel 8, they probably still have like They probably, I'm sure they have flat screen TVs by now, but they likely still have like cable TV and stuff. Like if you are operating and marketing in the lower to mid range, like don't go out and spend money on a glam bot or, this crazy technology that your market can't afford, because
you'll
then
never
you're
book
going
it.
yeah, they're never going to book it, or else you're going to start like reasoning with yourself to bring the price down, which is why you didn't get it. You got it in the first place to charge a higher price, and now you're bringing the price down.
Yeah.
And dirtying the water on a really elevated product. So if you're a budget to mid-range provider, just provide that mid-range to low budget product. Just bring the photo booth, bring the props. Don't try, and you're wasting money. Like don't spend all this money on these products that your clients can't afford anyways. So pay attention to that. And on the subject of paying attention to your clients, like when you're getting that user feedback or that client feedback by way of like reviews and things like that, read those things and see if those reflect your marketing. Or like if they're saying company X showed up on time and they had great output, or
and they were so cheap.
Whatever. Yeah, then that's, you're probably in the mid to low range. If they're defining you by a list of products, then you're probably in the low to mid range, because the higher end clients that are shopping by experience will also leave reviews as experiences. They'll talk about how amazing everything was and how happy everyone was. And if you're not seeing that, those results of people saying how seamless the photo booth was, then either work towards those goals of achieving those reviews, or just start marketing to the area that you're actually providing service to.
Other thing is too, like when you're a budget provider, Jason, what I started noticing, because I didn't realize that the services that I was delivering was above the level of a budget provider when I used to be a budget. When you start getting so many bookings that you can't keep up with the bookings, you have to really evaluate where you stand. Because I was a budget provider, I want to say like 3 or 4 years, and we were booking beyond the amount of boosts that we had. And it took me a second to sit there and think like, wow. And I look back now and I think my clients at that time knew that I was too cheap. That's the reason why I had so much bookings, because in the low budget and mid-range market, when you're competing with these other boothers, there's so much more. There's the cheaper you are, the more competition you have. So if you start seeing that you're booking a lot and all the other companies are not booking as much as you are, you're probably delivering more than the budget market that you're marketing to. And you might want to because that's what happened to me. I didn't realize that, like, as I was upgrading my equipment, my output has always been great. I started as a photographer. Well, it was great for the most part. There's some photos just like you, Jason, where I look back at the time, I thought it was amazing.
That's okay if you are always great. You're not hurting my feelings. I wasn't a photographer before.
No, because it's been so long, but I remember I had a booth that had like the ring. Do you remember those ring photo booths that had like the ring around it and it created like this halo shadow around people? I love them back in the day because that was perceived as like a high end output. And I look back now and I think, wow, those images were so like murky. But I'm just saying, like, as I was upgrading my equipment, as my, photography, my lighting, the presentation, the photo booths, as I was upgrading everything, my market that I was marketing to, which was budget backyard parties, they knew that I was a great deal. That's the reason why I was booking more than most budget providers around me. And I didn't realize that until I pulled back and I thought, wow, these people are booking me like a year. If they're booking you a year and a half, 2 years in advance, they know you don't know the value of what you're bringing. And that's what happened with me. And when I raised my prices, even though I was charging below where my market rate should have been, when I raised my prices overnight, it was a whole different pond that I was marketing to. So it was different clientele. My old clientele was still calling me and they were laughing at me. They were like hanging up the phone on me mid-sentence as I was giving them my new prices. And for a moment, I thought I was going to go out of business. But it was that once I survived that, I realized it's one of the challenges here in Southern California that a lot of the boothers struggle with. Like, they only know the market, the pond that they're in, and the clients in that pond are sending them a certain message of what a photo booth should cost. That's what happened with me. And when I realized I wasn't that provider anymore, that I was in a bigger pond at that time, the clientele in that budget pond was still telling me I was charging too much. But the mid-range customers were telling me I was cheap. So making that transition is really hard too. Like, you have to really, I think this is kind of important, like making sure you have like peers and providers, photo booth friends around you that can kind of help guide you. Because sometimes you don't know where you're at without like voices kind of helping you, people who have been doing this a little bit longer.
Sure. And like, one of the biggest takeaways I took from that, or the most important thing I think people should take away from that, is your unique perspective that you saw everyone wanting your product and you booking up more than everybody else in your same price range. A lot of people unfortunately take that as, I need to quickly expand to accommodate all these bookings, where that is the wrong approach. The right approach is, just like you said, I'm underpriced for my market. And you really want to increase your price till you're not booking those so much before you start expanding. Of course, like, increase your price as much as you can, maximize the value and profit before you start expanding out and whatnot, because so many people just, they're charging $300, they're booking really busy, and they decide they need to buy more booths and they need to start paying people, and very quickly they become upside down and can't grow. They kind of paint themselves into a corner. So that's great that you saw that as the opportunity and the need to change your market and increase your prices instead of.
I didn't see that, Jason. I personally did not see that myself.
Well, that's what I took
I'm
from
not
it.
gonna like a lot. Well, no, that's the thing. A lot of the folks in our industry around me, friends that I had made, going through to the expos every single year, I had made a lot of friends, and like, they're following like the work that I'm putting out. They're hearing about like my pricing. So I actually had a lot of people tell me, Lap, you're not charging enough. And in my mind, I hear all these voices, right now that are like, oh, we can't charge outside of, our market can't. So I had that same mentality, Jason, and I had people tell me, Lap, you're not charging me enough. You're not charging your clients enough. And I had the same argument. No, I can't. My market doesn't support a higher cost. So in my mind, I really believe that. But I had a lot of peers that were like yelling at me, Jason, for like 6 months to 12 months, a year and a half. It took me a long time to finally be brave enough to be like, okay, I don't really think that I'm charging, because when I was there at that point, I didn't think that I was charging below my value. I thought that I was charging competitive because everyone around me was charging exactly the same. Again, that's because I was in a certain pond where there was a lot of competition. In your lower budget market, there's a huge amount of vendors that are all competing for the same limited amount of events. So in my mind, and just the interactions I had with the pond of clients that I got leads from, everybody was telling me that I was expensive. But as soon as you move into the mid-range market, you're no longer expensive because the clients have a different perspective of where they think a photo booth should cost, what a photo booth should cost. So suddenly I doubled my price. I went from like $350 or something like that. I went to like $875 and suddenly double the price. My old clients were laughing at me, hanging up the phone. My new clients, the new leads that I was getting in the mid-range, were all thrilled how cheap I was, So it's understanding that it's a whole different market. And with that comes a whole different set of standards along with the pricing. You charge more, but there's different expectations, and your clients are going to interact with you different as well. I feel like when you're in the lower budget, even though it's low budget, $350 to us as providers, that's low budget. But to that client, $350 might be like half of their entire party budget. So they want to maximize on the value of what they're getting from you. So they're going to demand more from you.
Yes.
$1 million wedding that's booking you for, $1,000 seems like a lot, except in comparison to $1 million budget, they probably spent $1,000 on their napkins. They don't, they're going to be they trust that you're a professional. They trust you know what you're going to do. They don't feel need to like handhold and babysit you and check in with you every couple of days. Where a low budget, it's a huge investment. That $350 is probably most of their budget, half of their budget at least, so they're going to be more, checking in every single day, making sure that everything is exactly to the T, all the T's are crossed, because they want to know that big budget of theirs, that big portion of their budget is going to be allocated where when you deliver, it's going to be the experience that they want. So it's more pressure on a low budget event, which you don't expect it to be. Yeah.
You don't expect it to be. And like you, to add on what you were saying, like they may spend $1,000 on napkins. There's a screenshot that I was sharing for a little while of a local company in town that rents furniture of a sofa that they rent, where the delivery and everything, the sofa, the delivery and pickup was something like $900. And I'm like, you guys are complaining about, they're saying that people won't pay $500 for a photo booth, but they're paying $700 or $900 for a couch, for a sofa, or a love seat, or whatever it was. Like they will. And my pricing, I was $350. We went to $500, then $750, and then we made the jump from $750 to $1,300. So we like almost doubled our rates there, and like we've had very little pushback at all. Like some of our past clients, when we went from $750 to $1,300, we would tell them, we increased our prices this much, but we're going to meet you in the middle this year because we appreciate your continued support and whatnot. But as far as like new customers that came in, like no one was like, wow, you're so much. I mean, we get that anyways.
You're already established.
But we didn't get any more of that than we're used to getting. Like we've always, ever since we were like $750, we had plenty of people telling us, you're more than our other quotes, and that's fine. But
you always
like,
get that though.
And if everyone is booking you, if your prices are on your website, you're going to have a higher booking ratio. But if everyone is calling you and booking, then your price isn't high enough. Like you need some pushback. Like we strive for a 30% booking ratio. We are usually right around that number. But if we were like even booking half of our inquiries, then we would definitely be raising our prices. So, I mean, certainly if you're closing like 80% of the calls that come in, you are way too cheap.
Yeah, listen to everybody else who's telling you you're way too cheap. I mean, I think it's good that you brought up the whole concept of like people come to you and tell you that you're too expensive, and that's the thing that I saw when I was very, very new. I was charging $125 for 2 hours. People thought that I was too expensive. When I raised my prices to $350, there was people who thought I was too expensive. When I went to, $875, no matter where you're at in price point, someone's going to think you're too cheap. Someone's going to think you're too expensive, no matter where you're at. The one thing you don't want though, is if you're targeting a high-end market, more upscale, you do not want to be too cheap, because that's concerning for your clients. If your clients are, used to photo booth vendors that are charging, 4 digits for their photo booths, and you come in with $500, that client's going to wonder why you're so cheap. They actually probably won't book you because you're too cheap. They're going to wonder how you're able to deliver the services. That's something that people don't think. Like in the high end market, you can't be a low cost. What's that called? Low price leader. You can't be a low price leader when you're in a high end market. The clientele has different expectations of you.
Yes.
You can't be a value.
Short story of witnessing that firsthand. So we hosted a blood drive at our office last, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months ago or something like that. And we had met some random DJ at a networking event who heard about it and asked if he could come set up and play during this blood drive. And we were like, we expect like 8 people to show up. So it's probably not the best use of your time. And he was like, no, that's cool. Whatever. I don't mind. I'm going to come out. And he did. And we had most of the people that came out were people in our circle, because we were posting to our socials and stuff. So like there was a lot of planners and things like that. But one planner in particular came in, they really liked this DJ and asked what he charges. And he told them, and it was very low. And they're like, why are you so cheap? And he says, well, I'm new to town. I'm trying to establish myself. And she's like, I'll tell you right now, like if you called me and told me that you were that cheap without me seeing you, I would not even entertain you. And I'll start using you and giving you a chance, but you've got to double your rate. Like she told him, I'm not going to book you unless you charge me twice what you're charging right now, because you're not going to take it serious. If you're only charging, I think it was like $500, like you're not going to take my event serious enough. Like if you're willing to to take $1,000, I'll start using you today, at least on a trial basis, to see how things work out. And I see these guys at every networking event that we go to, and every single time they come to us and they're like, man, thank you so much for having us out at that event, because this has turned into such a good relationship. And also we've been able to double our prices for everybody now from what we were trying to charge to get established. So you're right. Like when people see the lower price, they hear this is lower quality right away. What's wrong with this company? Why is it so cheap? So.
And why aren't they in demand? Yeah. I think the whole concept of like the mentality is like they're wondering, why aren't you in demand if you're good and you're charging so cheap? Like, especially as a DJ and us too as photo booth providers, like there's only a certain amount of photo booths and a certain amount of team members that we can send out. And most photo booth providers, they work Friday and Saturday, like most of them, right? So that's 2 days out of the week that you have availability. And if you're only charging $500, it makes a client wonder, like, why is nobody else booking you if you only have you essentially have like 8 days out of the month to make your entire income. And if you're charging so cheap, it's because there's something that you're lacking, either it be experience, professionalism. It just makes these clients don't want to take chances on a vendor. A budget birthday party, backyard party, they don't care. If your printer doesn't work for half the time, they're going to be annoyed, but they're not worried about like their reputation as a planner. They're not worried about like their professionalism and how they come off to the venue. There's a lot less at stake for a birthday party. And a lot of times that
backyard party, a lot of times that client won't even care. They'll laugh it off. And like you said, it's like you're almost part of the family. But if your printer stops working at the Waldorf, like that's going to turn out very poorly. That's going to hurt you.
I mean, because all the vendors are watching. It's not just the venue, it's not just the planner, the DJ, the floors, all the other vendors are paying attention to the fact that like if your printer goes down, and it's going to go down. We work with electronics. There's moments where they work, there's moments where they don't. The difference is how you handle it. Like a high-end vendor is going to have, backup. They're going to be able to pull out that second printer, that second camera. That's the difference between a backyard party. Is like if their photo booth stops working, most of them will just shut down. Actually, I've heard from a lot of like people that have called me in frantic, like, oh my gosh, my photo booth, the provider, their camera broke, so they canceled. And you would not be able to do that when you're marketing to middle high range, or high end clients. Like your camera breaking is not a reason for you to cancel their event, and that's the difference. Like when you're at an event at the Waldorf, and if your camera stops working, you have to be able to pull out a second camera and get back up and running within 10 minutes, the faster, the better, of course, but definitely a difference in I feel like professionalism is really the core concept of it.
Yes, I agree. So
professionalism, experience.
So how do you, to advance yourself, how do you get to that next level of professionalism and knowledge? And of course, like professionalism, it's experience, it's talking to your peers, it's learning and growing, which is why, those first 18 months, you're not going to be a luxury brand, even if you tell yourself you are, because unless you've got a lot of photography experience, you've worked with customer service
or marketing background. Yeah,
exactly. So you've got to learn those things. So, go to PBX, go to some classes, meet people, definitely like meet tons of people. That's the biggest takeaway from PBX that I could tell you. Like besides making so many friends, I've got more close friends in the photo booth world than I have in my personal life, just from PBX. And it's ridiculous. Like it's the best weekend of the year for me, definitely. And those friends, not only are they friends, but they come through when I'm having technical difficulties. Sometimes I'll reach out to like Mitch has done Photoshop work for me on the fly, and he even like coded something for me to fix something after an event once because something didn't happen right, and he wrote a code to help me out. So like these friends are super valuable, and I can't tell you, like the whole reason that Lap and I are here today is because like the very first person I call with any photo booth questions or tech questions, or what do you think about this? I'm always like, hey, Lap, do you have 2 minutes to jump on a phone call? In fact, we did that yesterday over something, because, you know, you need those people that you can always reach out to. And sometimes you kind of figure it out yourself, but, you know, it's just that spitballing and going back and forth and saying things out loud.
A second voice.
That's really important. Yeah. So it's very, very valuable to have friends in the industry that you can rely on and grow from. Also, like photography classes, we say it a lot. You see it in the forums a lot, but like take a photography class, like learn what you're doing. Even if you're just shooting on iPads, there's still a lot of things you could learn about how light works. And there's a lot of stuff like Skillshare, I believe. Like sign up for Skillshare. They've got tons of great classes on there. Most of it you can just find on YouTube if you want to do the like the long search of trying to find out what's good and what's not. But Skillshare is an awesome tool to sign up for. They've got classes from photography basics to Photoshop to Canva to marketing. Like everything you need is in Skillshare. Also, I should get like a promo code and put it down for people to sign up and give us a kickback. Learn Photoshop. Like I know there's companies out there that offer those things, but when you move on to like corporate stuff, like there's no way I could deal with marketing events if I didn't have knowledge of Photoshop. There's so many times where they need like instant tweaks. And if you're using a custom service that designs something for you and you send it over and they want it tweaked and it comes back to you and you've got to send it back to this other person that may be in a different time zone and not working right now, or a different, you know, if you're using a VA and they're sleeping at the time, like that's fine if you're using somebody like that for most of your things, but you need to learn some basics. If you just need to change some colors or move things over a little bit, like definitely take some time to learn Photoshop or Canva at the very least.
Absolutely.
And read stuff, get some marketing books, marketing podcasts, our podcast. And like we mentioned earlier, mirror people. Find photo booth companies that you want to be like. I'm trying to think of any that operate in the closer to luxury level, and the first name that pops to my mind is Catalina. If you're not following modern photo booths, like definitely go follow her Instagram. It's really great. I can't think of anyone else offhand, but outside of the photo booth world as well, like we mentioned or hit on earlier, if you're comparing yourself to Prada, follow Prada's marketing. Follow them on Instagram and see what they're doing, seeing how they reach out to people, and kind of try and mirror that. But as far as learning and growing, I think that's kind of the only tips that I have for you. So probably wraps it up. Appreciate everyone sticking in. That was pretty long. We're hitting an hour right now. So pretty long one. Yeah.
Extensive topic. I mean, everybody wants to know about it.
Yeah, and I'm sure, you know, from questions that we get, we could probably do a second episode on it as well. We look forward to that. But all the social media stuff, follow us, subscribe, engagement helps, leave comments, leave reviews, send questions. Preferably send questions in a video format, landscape, but if you want to just shoot us an email, that works as well. If your question is in depth, maybe it'll give us an idea for an entire show, or otherwise we'll just put together several shorter questions for a Q&A episode that we're looking forward to doing. But otherwise, that's all we've got. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
Help to keep this free information coming. Subscribe to Pro Booth Talk in iTunes or Stitcher Radio. And while you're there, be sure to give us a 5-star rating. Finally, watch for show updates at facebook.com/ProBoothTalk.